This is a project lesson by Ekman Fine Art, Christmas Tree Ornament, Noel Bell. Project lessons are for learning acid-free fine art cast paper sculpture using the Ekman method. To order, go to ekmanfineart.com. For this lesson, we're going to do the Noel Bell. This is your kit. You have paper, hanging device, casts, and bonding agent. Here's your paper. You have a number 2 sheet, a number 4 sheet, and a thin, hard sheet. The first thing you'll want to do is mix your bonding agent. Add a 1/4 cup of water to a pot on the stove. When it comes to a boil, then add the powder that's in the package from the kit. You'll mix this thoroughly in the water. Here Patty's using a whisk. You could use a spoon or whatever you want. Just mix it up real good. It'll turn milky. Then you'll want to add some ice. And the ice serves to cool the bonding agent. As it cools, it gets thicker. Have 2 containers ready. Add this thick bonding agent to one of the containers. After you've added the thick to one container, pour half of that thick bonding agent into the second container. Now you'll want to add water and mix thoroughly. Once you've got that thinned a little bit, you might want to add a little more water. The more water you add, the thinner it gets. Remember though, you can always make your bonding agent thinner, but the only way you can make it thicker is to add more of your thick. Now if you want to make a candy cane, take about 3.5 inches off the long side of that number 4 sheet, measure it, and use a clear straight edge. Here I use a triangle, and I'm going to tear it just a little bit at a time, holding it down hard and tearing it with my other hand. This is a bonus ornament that you can do. You could probably do 2 of them with this kit if you want to tear off another sheet of paper, and the instruction is on our YouTube account. And any of the other Christmas tree ornaments you choose to do, there's also enough paper to do 1 or 2 more candy canes with each kit. Here are the casts you get in the Noel Bell kit. We're going to deal first with the bell. So the first thing you're going to want to do is trim off the extra paper. You can see where to do that. Here I'm using an X-Acto knife. Be careful if you use a knife. You don't want to cut yourself. And also you can use scissors. Here I'm using a pair of curved fingernail scissors to trim off that extra paper. I want to encourage you to save all your scraps on these kits. After you have both sides trimmed out, you want to put a bead of bonding agent right on the lip, and then sort of press these together. You can see they fit together, and that bonding agent will hold it. I'm going to bend that little finial on the top to get it to fit pretty good. And then I'm just going to use little strips of tape. I've cut a piece of masking tape and into sections, and I'm just going to tape these together just to hold it. And after I have it all taped together, then I'm going to dry that. You see there's a little ridge. We'll take care of that later. So this is how we dry it. Just put it under a fan and dry that little bell. Won't take very long to do that under a fan. And then you can take X-Acto knife. Don't cut yourself. Trim off any little ridge that you have. I'm going to take the number 2 sheet or the number 4 sheet. This is the number 2. This one's a little thicker. This is a number 4. That's what you use to chase these out with. If you have a big ridge you need to take care of, you might want to go with thicker paper. But I'm going to tear that up into little strips. And then I'm going to wet the paper with the bonding agent and lay it right over the ridge. Then I'm going to take my burnisher and I'm going to flatten those areas out a little bit. We have some snowflakes on there and some type that says Noel. Those are for placement. We're just going to not worry about them too much right now. What we want to take care of is the wrinkles in the casts, and in putting these strips on, we're also going to cover some of those wrinkles but take care of that seam to make it seamless. Using a burnisher, wetting the bell, and then burnishing over it. Now I'm going to work a little bit on some of these areas that have wrinkles in them. Lay that number 2 sheet on there and burnish it. The bottom I want it to be flat, so I've torn number 2 and number 4 sheets. Depending on how much I need to add there, I'll just pick them up with my brush and lay them in place, and then I'm going to go over those with my burnisher. I'm adding a generous amount of paper on the bottom of this. Then I'll take my large burnisher that we sell on our website. I call it a paddle burnisher. It's got a nice flat, wide surface to sort of burnish this down with it. Right there it is. Rubbing back and forth, adding enough pressure to get it down flat. And a little more right there, and we'll get this finished up. Then I'm going to dry this again. Okay, I've got it dried. Now I'm going to take a grinder. This is a little gray grinding pad that I got at the hardware store with a little handle. Handy tool. You can kind of use that after you've covered some of those areas with paper that are rough on the surface of the bell and the bottom. You can grind it a little bit. Then wet it some more and burnish it. Get it nice and flat on the bottom and on the sides, smooth. You don't have to get it as smooth as you need to. If you're going to paint it, you might want it smoother. I'm going to use glitter, which will take care of any imperfections on the surface of the bell. Now I'm going to put a little handle. I'm using awl. Poke a hole in the top of that just to hold things a little bit. I got a little bit wet, so that'll give me a chance to hold it and then something dry. Now I'm going to work a little more on the wrinkles. This is a tuck tool burnisher that we also have on our website to kind of work out some of these little details on the snowflakes. I don't worry too much about that. In fact, I could grind them down a little bit to get them just a little flatter. We're going to go over top of those with the detail cast that we have of snowflakes, and we'll do the same with the type that says Noel. Now I have it a little bit wet, so I'm going to want to dry it again before we go to the next step. Okay, now I have it dry, and I got a little mask here, and I'm going to put that on. Good to put that on if you do grinding. A little dust that you get from your grinding tool may irritate you a little bit, so I like to wear that mask to keep the dust from going into my lungs and nose if I'm doing a lot of grinding. Okay, I'm just working my way around it, smoothing a little bit. I'm not that concerned about the relief images on here of the type and the snowflakes, because I'm going to just use those for position and go over top of them with the real detailed type and snowflake cast that we have. I made a little stand for this. I just took a little block of 2x4 and drilled a hole in it so I can make a stand for my bell to work on. Just a simple little device there. Now I'm going to work on the detail. I want to put a little ringer on the bottom of that bell. So I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm going to wet it, and I'm going to make a ball. I'm going to teach you how to make also the little holly berries that will go on the detail too. So just wet piece of paper, and I'm just going to tear a piece off, and I'm going to roll it in my hand. Just roll it around in my fingers. I'm going to add a little more, get a little bit bigger. Decided I'd make a nice round ball. What I'm going to do is roll it in my hands like a piece of clay, and then set it aside and let it dry. After I get it the way I want it, wet it a little more here. what I'm going to do after that dries is burnish it a little bit, and then I'll cut it in half to put the ringer on the bottom of the bell. So we'll set that aside. Now let's make some berries for the holly, little holly berries. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to make small ones though, and these I won't cut in half. I'll paint them and then I'll put glitter on them. We'll show you that, and then in the next video where we do the finishing of this piece. This first half of the video, we're just going to do the sculpting and chasing. Yeah, that's a good sized berry. I got it compared to a holly leaf there, and there's the rest of my holly leaves. I'll have to cut those out. So I'm going to make a series of berries. Try to make them about the same size. They don't have to be on real holly berries. They're not always the same size either. And I'll do probably more than I'm going to use, but I'll do a number of them. Simple little addition to detail on this that kind of cute on the top of that bell. And also, if you want to just paint them, don't want to add glitter, you can do that too. I did this a certain way, but it doesn't mean the next one that I do I will do the same way. I might do something a little different on the next kit, Noel bell kit. Anyway, do a series of berries and just set them aside to dry. And then we'll move on to the next step. Now you can see I've got my berries up there. I rolled 10 out, and then a big one for the ringer. Now I'm going to work on these snowflakes. So I'm tearing a snowflake off. I don't have to worry about getting it cut out. I want a little bit of that paper with a sort of a feathered edge. That's what you get when you tear it. And I'll find the flake that kind of matches the one that's in real detail. I'm going to lay it right over top of it. This adds a little more relief as well as detail. So I wet the snowflake on the bell and then the bottom of the cast, and then right around the edges where I'll feather it in. And I'm going to use that tuck tool burnisher that you can find on our website. It's a tool that I invented. It's got this metal end that's I use for a tuck side, tuck things under. It's a little bit bent, a little pointed, and it's metal, so it's strong. And the other side is wood for burnishing. I use this tool more than any other tool in my toolbox. It really does a great job. Push it in with my fingers and then work around the detail of that snowflake before I do that again with another snowflake. And I can burnish around the bell too. And I'm going to work it all the way around every snowflake. You have a little more than you need, but they have a lot more detail on. We cast these a little differently than we do the bell. Can't cast the bell the same way. It has too much depth to it. That's why there's a little more wrinkle. We use a process of casting on these snowflakes that are a little more involved, and we use our vacuum press to get the detail in it. Can't do that with the bell. So I'm going to work around this snowflake with this hard tip, and then when it dries I can work it in a little bit more. Again, I'm being pretty meticulous on this. If I wanted to paint it, I could paint it because I do get it smooth enough, but again on this one I'm going to add glitter, and the glitter kind of covers up a lot of the imperfections that I could have in there. So if you're going to use glitter, don't be real meticulous. It won't matter how smooth you get it. I'll put this one right here. I'm not going to show you how I do every one of these. It's not that interesting. But you can see I'm using some pressure in my fingers to really get it in place and to add that pressure to get it to bond real good with the bonding agent under the cast and also on the surface of the snowflake that's already in position on the bell. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with the type. I've got all my snowflakes in place. Now I'm going to wet the letters on the bell. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tear off right around the end first. I'm going to start with the end on Noel. Cut it a little bit, tear it, and then I'm going to wet the back of that detail cast. And that again is a little bit smoother. And then I'll put it right over top of the end that's on my bell, which just like the snowflake is for position on the bell cast. That will help you get them straight and looking nice right on the bell. And also using my burnisher, tuck tool burnisher, I'm going to take out the ridges and the feathering that's on that end. Now here's my next letter, which is the O, and I'm going to put that on and position right over the O that's on the bell. Then I'm going to do the E and the L, and we'll have that all finished. Again, I want to encourage you to try to tear around the outside of these characters so you can feather them in rather than cut straight edges around it. I guess if you want to do that, you can. I've learned to do it this way because I feel like I can get less ridges in there and a better finished result when I'm done. Okay, now I've got the E and the L in place, and I'm going to burnish around those as well. After I'm finished with this, I'll dry this again. I'll dry it really dry and hard, what I call rock hard and bone dry, and then I can go over it, working any edges out with that tuck tool burnisher and smooth it again. And if I want to, I can do a little more grinding on it. But there's my bell, and I can put it in my little stand and dry it now. While that's drying, I'm going to work on my beads. First I'll do the ringer, and I'm going to get that burnished down a little more. Just in my hands, I'm going to shape it a little bit better. They're not quite dry, but they're dehydrated enough for me to roll them and get them a little bit smoother. You can see they're getting a little smaller too. Yet that water adds a lot of thickness to the paper, but when some of it has evaporated out, a little easier to manage. Now they're completely dry. My bell's completely dried. I'm going to take that bigger one, and I'm just going to cut it right in half with my X-Acto knife. Okay, I'm only going to use one side, so I'll find the side that I like the best. I'm going to place it right in the middle of the bottom of that bell. I'm going to wet the cast, and I'm going to wet the half bead and position it right in the center where it's wet. Then I'm going to go over top of that with a little pad, number 2 sheet of paper. Well, I wet the top of the bead now and go over that. Now I'm going to fill that hole on the top, and fill that hole completely, go over it, burnish it, get ready to dry it, and I'll put my hanging device on there, my little loop. Now I'm going to dry this. Next, I'm going to take my little curved scissors, and I'm going to cut off the trim around each of these little holly leaves. I want to keep the stem on there, and I want to keep the detail around those leaves. You can see where the shape is. Now I'm going to carefully cut all these out. Get them just perfect. Cut all around this one, and then I'll cut in where the little shapes of the detail is around these leaves. They have little thorns on them, little pokey leaf there. So I'm going to be careful to make sure that detail remains on each leaf. Now after I've cut the leaf out, I'm going to use a little bit of this grinding paper. I don't like to use sandpaper. Sandpaper can discolor it. It's sand, so it's got dirt in it, and we want to try to keep our paper clean. I guess if you can find some sandpaper that doesn't leave a residue on there, then you're fine. Some does, some doesn't. But you want to go around and get the little flakes of paper off where you cut. Now I'll cut the next one out. Do the same thing. Okay, I've got my bell dried. Now I'm going to put in the loop for the hanging device, and I make a little slit on the top of that finial on the top of the bell with my X-Acto knife, and then I'm going to take my tuck tool burnisher and I'm going to push that into that little slit to make it wide enough to add my little hanging loop. I'll wet it, and I'm going to take the loop and I'm going to push it right inside there, and then I'm going to go around that with a little paper and burnisher. Now you notice the way I have that loop in there. It's right in the middle. It's kind of important to get that Noel to hang out. You want to be able to see that. So that loop can't be sideways. It has to be the way I have it here. So you can see it's kind of a, if you're looking at the type and you look at that loop, you can't see the holes in it. It looks kind of straight. Now I can burnish a little bit on the bottom, sand first, and then burnish it. Get that little ringer flat. Again, I'm probably getting this smoother than I need to, but you may want to just seal this and not even paint it. And if you do that, you want it to be smooth. If you paint it, you still want it to be smooth. If you're adding glitter, then it doesn't matter too much. Now what we're going to do with the wheel hole glue, we have it all done. We're going to do what I call a penetration seal. So this wheel hole glue, I've already added water to the bottom of this gallon. It's pretty thin. So I've taken it and I've shaken it up in the bottom of that gallon can that I have. And because there wasn't much in there, I just really wanted to have it thin. If you don't use a gallon can, just I guess mix it maybe 35% glue and 30 to 35% glue and the rest with water. And then you're just going to paint that thin penetration seal on there. And what happens is the glue absorbs into the paper. This paper is just, it's like a sponge. It's just going to soak right in. This will make it harder, and it'll make it sealed. So you're protecting that acid-free paper. This is really important if you're going to not paint it. So you want to do this. I'll do it maybe 1 or 2 times if I'm not going to paint this. Once is good if you're going to paint it. This is what I call sealing the paper. Protects it, makes it harder. Now, do this with your holly leaves and your holly berries as well, and also the surface seal. Now I'm going to do a surface seal, and I'm just going to use titanium white Liquitex paint, acrylic paint, and you can see I'm wetting that a little bit. It's kind of, this is thick, so I want it to be thinner. And you can add a little glue to that too, some of that penetration seal glue. That won't hurt it at all, but keeping it thin will also keep that detail visible on the surface of your bell. So I'm careful to get it smooth on there and also covered. I can even hold it with my fingers on that little hanging loop, metal loop that we put in your kit that I've applied to the top of that finial. After this is all done, it's dry, we'll go to the next step, which is in the next video. Where I'm going to paint this and put glitter on it. There, I've got it pretty well coated. So I'll dry this on my drying stand, which you should take a look at all of our tools in on our website under the tools section under Ekman method. See what you might want there. Anyway, this will conclude the first half of this video, which is doing the sculpting part. Now go to part 2 and I'll show you how we finish this up.